Hey everyone, welcome back. Today is going to be an explainer video, and we are going to be touching upon a very important topic as it pertains to how AI generates its responses. We're going to be talking about retrieval augmented generation and its evolution into agentic RAG. Very important topic, so stay tuned. Now, to help me break this down into simpler terms, I have solicited the help of an expert. Joining me today is Ashwin Rana. Ashwin is the Vice President of Partner Solution Engineering at TalkDesk, a leading AI company in the customer experience space. Ashwin, welcome, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Ashish, for having me for this session.
All right, so let's jump right into it. I'm going to ask you this question like Denzel Washington does in the movie Philadelphia. Can you explain RAG to me like I'm a 5-year-old? The floor is all yours.
Definitely. And I will be using some slides to help me draw the picture. Okay. So before we get into the specifics of RAG, the question is why even have something like RAG? Why do I need that? So let's answer that. So, most of the time, enterprises are using LLMs for their AI applications, and these LLMs are trained on large body of data, but these are not the enterprise data. So the challenge is there is a training data limitation. The training has happened on general data, but not enterprises specific documents, policies, and systems. So that's one challenge. The second challenge is the LLMs have knowledge up to the time they were trained and then they were released. However, that knowledge becomes outdated very quickly because enterprises have knowledge base which continues to change. There's a new release, new development, new products which are coming out. So you need that part to account for as well. And the LLMs by themselves, if you ask them question, then they lack the context awareness. So they are not aware of the context in which you are asking the question, and depending upon that, the answer may be wrong. They also don't know your enterprise specific internal jargon or like processes which are specific to the enterprises. So those are some of the limitation. And if you roll out an AI solution which is not grounded into enterprise data, then you risk uh, doing decision making based on completely incorrect information. This could result in erosion of your user trust, and also it will generate barrier to entries and potential compliance rules. So with that, now let's look at the RAG. So think of RAG as a librarian plus a writer on your team. So you walk into the library, you say that I'm looking for children's book, probably more like 5 to 8 years old. You're looking for some adventures books. Librarian, if you don't know, then you'll have to scan through the whole library, 10,000 books, versus librarian will send you exactly to the right department, right location, where there may be 5 books and you pick one. And the writer part that comes from the LLM where it generates based on the information now you received a more human friendly answer. So that's more like a high level view of retrieval and generation. Augmentation comes like the question you ask now, like those that additional um, information which comes from the book is the augmentation part, and that's being fed into the LLM to provide you the answer what you're looking for.
Understand.
Yeah. So let's look at the indexing first, and then we'll go into the retrieval and generation part. So indexing in RAG is preparation step. This is where all your documents are converted into chunks, and then they are embedded, embeddings are generated, and then they are stored in the database. At the time when the query comes, it could be used. So the whole indexing phase is something which is done at the time of provisioning. When you have all your documents, you're provisioning for the first time. This step comes into picture. retrieval and generation part happens at the inference time. Anytime you have a query you send. So this part gets executed a lot more often, but indexing part, at least for your enterprise knowledge base, happens at the provisioning time. And so now let's look at what happens at the indexing time, right? We'll use a specific example. Let's say you want to upload a PDF file into the knowledge management. First of all, that like 10,000 page PDF document gets split into smaller chunks. So that could be on a page by page basis or a paragraph. And then that chunk is then get converted and mathematical representation of that chunk is getting generated, and that's called the embedding process, and it generates the vector, and then those vectors representing that sentence are stored in vector database, and those database actually help you search for the chunks or the knowledge article which are in similar in meaning.
Okay, got it.
So if you are asking, for example, password reset, then it will look through and all the articles or chunks which talk about that part, those are represented. So you're not really looking for exact word match. What
Got
you're
it.
looking for is similar in meaning, because that the original knowledge base could be in totally different language altogether. And there is, as you know, that there is so many different ways to ask the same question. So you're not really doing exact word match, you are looking to a semantic match. But what happens, this is where we go. So what happens when you ask a question? So first of all, that question is also now the embedding for that question gets generated similar to the way we generated embedding for the knowledge management article and the chunks. And
Mm-hmm.
then you try to find the answers which are closer to it.
Okay.
Okay. Now here, for the purpose of human understanding, we have a three-dimensional vector, but in reality, it is anywhere between 384 to 1536 dimensions. It's not 3D. So that's the
Okay.
only part. This is just for the human understanding, if you will.
Got it. It's a lot more complicated, is what you're saying.
It's you're right. You're right. It's a lot more complicated, but you're finding the chunks which are similar in meaning to the question you are asking. So
Okay.
now, once you have those questions, and so now let's go through the standard RAG pipeline and the agentic RAG pipeline, and what's the difference between them. So you get a query from a user, you retrieve the chunks which are
Okay.
stored in the vector database, and then you rank them based on the relevance, which are closer to the questions being asked, and then you send that information along with the original question to the LLM, and you get an answer which is more ready for human consumption, if you will. All the mathematical representation is gone. Now again, it's the clear text which human can understand, and you
Understand.
get your answer. So this is the standard RAG pipeline.
Understand. So before it generates the answer, the question is kind of rewritten so that you get a lot more concise, precise answer.
That's correct, yeah. But not so much as part of the standard RAG, but you do see, there's a lot more goes into the agentic RAG. So in the agentic RAG,
So hang on. We are talking now about the evolution of this traditional RAG into agentic RAG, right? So now go ahead, Ashwin.
that's correct. Now we are talking about the evolution. So when someone asks a question, right, it may not be there may not be any context. It may not be very clear question. For example, someone may ask that, okay, how do I reset the password? But they didn't tell you that, like, which operating system they're working on, and depending upon Windows, Mac, Android, iOS, or Linux, it could be a different answer. So that disambiguation stage is where you get more information from the user, or you derive that if there was any communication prior to that, then based on context, you derive that. So you don't need to ask that question all the time. Now you retrieve the chunks and grade them, and if you find them relevant, then you send that to LLM for generating an answer, and then you ask that question: that did I answer that question? So this
Okay.
is similar to the way when humans do search on the internet, like we come across many answers and you read through and then you say that, oh, like, you are analyzing and say, did this really answer my question or not? Because it could be something related to it, but not exactly the same topic I want to have addressed. And if the
Okay.
answer
Okay.
was good, then fine. But if you didn't answer, then you go through the whole query rewrite process, and make it more, provide more context, make it more clear, and then go through the whole process again.
So it is iterating, if you will. It is
It's
going back and okay.
Yeah, but think of this more as at an agent level versus there's an outer ring, and think of that as more as a managerial level. So, like you did the search, and first time you may have come across many answers, but then you go through the outer ring as well after you generated answer, and if the analysis was that no, it really didn't answer the question, then you go through the process. You may, as part of that, ask uh, the human again, like, ask them to disambiguate the question,
Okay.
and then you, with that added information, you go back, and also go through the whole process and get the answer. In this process, you may decide to use a different knowledge base based on the clarity and the context you may receive, as well as you may pull in the data from the system of record, CRM, and now your query is more enriched, and of course,
Okay.
then you'll be able to answer.
Okay. So I'm gonna summarize this, Ashwin, and tell me if I'm right or wrong. In traditional RAG, you retrieve the data once based on the user's query. You pass that data into the model prompt, and the model generates the final answer. It's simple, but it's static. The model doesn't adapt its retrieval strategy mid task, like the way you just explained. Agentic RAG, however, is introducing this concept of iteration and autonomy, if you will, into the retrieval process. Instead of being a single shot retrieval system, your AI is acting like an agent, right? So it's planning what information it needs, it's retrieving the relevant pieces iteratively because it's going through that loop. It analyzes, it reasons over them, decides whether more retrieval is needed, and then it synthesizes the final grounded answer, right? So it's basically, and if it needs more context, it would even go back to the human and say, hey, can you provide me more context? And you gave a good example, right? Where someone says, hey, I want to reset my password, but they did not specify whether the password reset was needed on Android or iOS or Windows or Mac, because, the answers might be different based on that. So that's the difference, right, between agentic and traditional. I hope I kind of summarized it very. The TLDR was pretty good.
It was very good. Thank you for that.
Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate you coming on. And, I asked you, can you explain this to me like a 5-year-old? But I think it's a little bit over the 5-year-olds.
Well, I don't
But
know
we
that
want
many
to.
5-year-old who are actually working with RAG and AI. So
Yeah, you
eventually,
never know. You never know in this new age. Kids are too smart. But I again want to thank you for coming on and explaining this to us. Of course, our content is meant for people who are looking for real life use cases of RAG and not just something that you read on the internet. This is what we are doing, and for in our field in customer experience, RAG is extremely important because the answers that we need to generate, we cannot rely on hallucinations. It has to be very accurate. So thank you again, and we'll get you on again in the next few explainer videos when we do those. So